Welcome to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast, presented by FantasyGolfBag.com, your number one source for the most in-depth PGA Tour analysis in the daily fantasy and sports betting world. Each week, our experts will discuss everything you need to know, from the course preview and key stats to top plays, fades, and strategies. Whether golf betting, grinding out cash games, or playing for a big GPP win, our team has you covered. Let's get after it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. I'm your host, Red Kachik, and we'll be doing a solo show this evening. Could not coordinate with Axis, but he did already post his course profile article. You can find on the website, fantasygolfbag.com. But yeah, he broke down the Sea Island, both Seaside and Plantation. So you can get his words of wisdom and his thoughts behind the course fit already on the website. So otherwise, for the podcast, I'll be going solo, walking through the golf course, trying to hit on my tidbits. This is a interesting course, having two different courses. We have Seaside and we have the Plantation. Awesome place, though, up in Sea Island, Georgia, technically St. Simon's Island, but in the southeast part of Georgia. So not a lot to talk about from last week. Again, we'll do the hashtag Nick Ferrone rule and not reminisce too much, but we'll say special shout out to Brendan Todd. I mean, that's pretty incredible for him to come from the crevices of the golfing world to end up winning back-to-back events. Granted, both events were pretty weak fields. Last week was a little bit stronger, so I would, obviously chalk that one up to being a little bit more impressive than the Bermuda. But still, nevertheless, if you're going to win on the PGA Tour and then come back and win again, basically back-to-back weeks, that's pretty good. So shout out to him. We get on this week, and he has $9K, so has risen, almost $3,000 in probably 3 weeks now, 2 weeks. So interesting turn of events for him this season from where he was the last couple of years. So definitely a shout out to that, because that's impressive for you to come from nearly quitting golf to winning twice on the PGA Tour in as many weeks. So as we transition to the RSM Classic, this will be the last event that we will have for the calendar year, and then we'll be getting kind of ready for the President's Cup. Obviously, we won't have any content for that. We have a couple guests lined up for podcasts, so hopefully you guys check that out throughout the holiday season. As you know, we obviously cover fantasy golf and golf betting, but we throw in a lot of up and down series stuff. We did one with Brian Ritchie from the Korn Ferry Tour and Samantha Marks from the Golf Channel a couple weeks ago, talking through like the hot topics in golf for 2019 and looking forward. So definitely stay tuned. If you don't already, you can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Golf Bag. Of course, you can sign up for a free account at fantasygolfbag.com. And I guess subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever for podcasts, and then you get notified whenever we have a new show drop, so you don't have to be looking every single day or every week. But yeah, let's go ahead and move into the RSM. This shouldn't be a very long show, being as it is a solo podcast. The field is pretty spread out. I think it's an interesting one to play GPPs. The mid-range has decent options. There's some value plays, so you could pay up in the 11K range for a couple of these guys. But let's go ahead and dive into the golf courses and just try to get an idea for this golf course, both golf courses that these guys are going to be playing this week. So, as I said, the RSM Classic is being played in St. Simon's Island at the Sea Island Resort. Also, a little side point, if you guys are in that area in Georgia, North Florida, South Carolina, whatever, I highly recommend you guys check out Sea Island. Like, it's one of the coolest places for golf. I know people always talk about Myrtle Beach as like a golf destination because there's 800 golf courses within 50 miles or something like that. But as far as like PGA Tour caliber golf courses, Sea Island is as good as it gets. And there's places you can take your wife or significant other, whatever. They have spas and nice restaurants and stuff. But for golf, it's right on the intercoastal. It's just a really cool place. Golf courses are always in good shape. Really enjoyed going up there when I did back in school, and then when I was playing professionally, went up there for a couple Titleist fittings. They have a good, I think it's Craig Allen shout out to Craig Allen. I think he's the club fitter. I assume he's still there, but it's an awesome place, and a lot of guys on the PGA Tour call Sea Island home. So you'll hear that narrative this week a little bit of guys that are, live around there and play there. I don't pay too much attention to that. I think the better fit is seaside stuff that we kind of talked about last week. But yeah, so there's 2 golf courses that we'll be hitting on: the the Seaside course and the Plantation course. Let me hit the Seaside, and then I'll talk about the Plantation. Seaside will be the primary one. That is what they will play over the weekend, and that's where we get the shot link data. So we can, get a little bit more data from that golf course, and the other one's just a filler for the Plantation. So the Seaside's going to be a par 70, 7,000 yards right on the dot. Bermuda across the board. There's supposed to be Paspalum there, so I don't know if it's one of the courses that they use Paspalum. I thought it was a Seaside. We see it listed as Bermuda, so it doesn't really matter for us. The greens are going to be Bermuda. They don't put Paspalum on the greens, but keep that in mind. It's a scoring average of 69, so about 0.8 shots under par normally. Driving accuracy at 72%, driving distance at 279 yards. A little bit shorter on tour and a higher driving accuracy. So right from there, when you're looking at these statistics for the golf course, you can tell what is the priority for players. It's hitting in the fairway. They're not too concerned with distance. I know Axis in his article kind of brought up the strokes gained off the tee as an important metric. And it's weird with some weeks where strokes gained off the tee doesn't necessarily lead to a large number of the total strokes gained for the week. But the guys that are gaining the most strokes off the tee coming into the week are usually the ones you see at the top. So keep that in mind too when you read his article. He has a couple tables in there. He's listing the top guys for off the tee. He lists a course fit, a range, I think it was 125 to 150 or 150 to 175, something like that, and the top strokes gained approach numbers for guys coming in this week. But as we go down the list, green regulation 73.5%, so kind of on the high side again there. Greens are pretty big. There is a drastic difference between the 2 courses, and again, I'm only really focused on the Seaside, as the Plantation should only be played once by these guys. We got 6,100 square feet for the Plantation versus 7,200 square feet green size for the Seaside. So much bigger greens. Green regulation is not a priority for me this week just because the number is so high. But I do think the driving accuracy, looking at guys that have profiled well on similar golf courses, is going to be pretty important this week. We do have proximity numbers, so the EAP data that a lot of you guys use every single week is published already up on the website. Thanks to Sky for that. The prox average this week is 35 feet, and the average approach distance is 172 yards. As we transition just real quickly to the Plantation course, it's a par 70, 7,000 yards as well. Very short for a par 72. Again, the driving accuracy is at 70%, driving distance at 284, so kind of the same category there. The stroke average is 70.54, so 1.5 strokes under par there versus the 0.8. So definitely an easier golf course, not as much water. So keep that in mind. And because the green size was smaller, like I said, 6,100 square feet, the green regulation number is lower, so 67%. That's pretty much it on the golf course. Like I said, there's a couple things you can glean from Axis's article talking about off the tee. I think this week with the green regulation number being so high, it's not a priority. I'll probably run a couple models that'll use longer term and short term green regulation. I think it is a good metric. It's we do have a weighted version of that, which is really helpful. Guys that play a really tough golf course and had a lower green regulation number, but still above the field average is a good thing. Versus some guy playing these huge greens and they had 80% green regulation, but it really wasn't beating the field. So I do think the weighted stats in that regard for green regulation is important. But like driving accuracy, these guys play this differently. So I'm not looking at driving accuracy. Driving distance, not a big deal. But I do think strokes gained off the tee as shown with Axis's article, strokes gained approach, strokes gained field differential, and I did look at strokes gained around the green. I don't think it'll play a huge part here. There's a ton of water that lines these greens, but I did think that with a course this short, looking at around the green, that will probably be the wedges a lot of these guys will have into the par 5s, and I think the par 5 scoring will be important even for a par 70. So that's pretty much it for the golf course. Pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's an awesome track. It's an awesome resort. Looking forward to watching. I wish I could make it up for that trip. It's not really too far from Central Florida, but it is a bit out of the way just to go up there for a day or two when you got 2 or 3 events here in Florida. So let's go ahead and transition into DK pricing, and I'll run down the list. And I do have a couple guys that I'll mention. Like I said, I mostly will leave off the value guys for my article and the article on Roto Grinders. This week, there's 2 that are standing out that I wanted to mention. Like last week, Callum Hill was awesome for us. That was one that was left in the article. I'm going to touch on those 2 when we get down there. Actually, I have 3. And probably have maybe 1 or 2 more that it's worth writing up. But I wouldn't say it's thin down there, but there are a few that stand out for me. And those will be guys that I'll probably gravitate towards and have higher exposure. All right, before we get into the DK pricing real quick, I just remembered that I forgot to bring up the prior winners and the scores and stuff like that, so you can kind of use birdie or better if you want, or bogey avoidance. So this week, it'll obviously be a birdie fest to a degree. Shorter golf course, even though the driving distance will be tamed back a little bit just so guys are hitting in the fairway. Still very low scoring for this event. So last year, Charles Howell III finished at 19 under par. Austin Cook in 2017, 21 under par. Mackenzie Hughes, minus 17. Kevin Kisner, minus 22. Blew the field away that year. So I think the next best was like 16 under par, if I'm not mistaken. And then Robert Streb, 2014, 14 under. Chris Kirk, 14 under, 2013. That's as far back as I care to go. It's a very interesting dynamic at the top. So, like I said, there's some value plays that I can fit in, but I really don't feel like any of these guys are must plays. I think I saw a stat, it was EPAD on Twitter, that said like 3 of 3 in 2017, the most expensive guys missed the cut. 4 or 5 missed the cut in 2016, something like that. Looking at these guys at the top, you got Webb Simpson at 11.6, Billy Horschel at 11,000, Matt Kuchar at 10.6, Charles Howell III 10.4, defending champion. Harris English 10K continues to just kill it. Guy is just crushing. So it's an interesting builds this week, to be honest. I don't want to chase many of these guys. Like Harris English at 10K. Again, the field is going to be weaker. You don't need to be too concerned with pricing. Like that's probably one pet peeve of mine that I hear in the industry, or what most people will say. They kind of do it in other sports too, I guess, but it seems more so in golf because the strength of fields change so much. You get a guy that's 6.5K 1 week, and then the next week he plays in a weaker field and he's 8.8K, and they're like, you can't pay that price. It's a different field, but still a 10K Harris English doesn't seem right. He's top 5 in pricing this week, and we look at a course like this for him, a course where driving, like I said, off the tee is kind of important. At the golf course, it's not. And he's got 3 out of 5 missed cuts his last 5 years. 25th and 46th are the only 2 years where he did not miss the cut. Like, not a great showing here at this venue. He's been playing great, obviously. His last 5 events this year: 3rd place, 6th place, 33rd, 4th place, 5th place last week. Playing great. Again, it's not a price thing. I just don't think a golf course like this suits him. He's been playing great. His price is elevated. It's a good combo for me to just kind of avoid. Kuchar's interesting at 10.6. I feel like that's kind of non-prohibitive at the price. his form at this golf course has not been great. Very hit or miss, mostly miss. He's got three top 25s with a 7th place back in 2013, a miscut, and then a couple meddling like 20th place finishes, 25th place finishes. So he's not a must play, but he is probably the most interesting for me. Horschel at $11K, I do like this week, but he is expensive, and kind of the same deal for Webb Simpson. In GPPs, I think I'll probably get there. There's enough values for me to fit him in. If I had to rank them, so like don't do rankings very often because in golf it's very hard to just rank someone specifically. So much of it's dependent on price. But I think Webb Simpson would be kind of the catch play there. He's just so consistent. He's a echelon above these guys around him. So if I was playing cash this week, I would just plug in Webb Simpson and find value somewhere and feel a little bit better about my lineups. Horschel's always a wild card. Kuchar's fine. Like I could probably get behind Kuchar in cash, even though he hasn't had a great track record here. $1,000 savings off of Webb Simpson's probably doable. But Charles Howell III, Harris English, probably just GPPs. And most likely, to be honest, they're probably GPP plays on FanDuel instead of DraftKings. FanDuel pricing is generally softer, where you can fit in 2 of these studs, and the cheaper guys are really cheap and allows you to make some really funky lineups. So that's probably the way I'll go there. If you do use the PGA stat model on the website, I'll pull that up here in just a second, and I'll just run the optimal really fast just to get an idea if it's throwing in any of these 5 guys. Let's see here. So I'll do that. It does, yeah. So it throws in Webb Simpson into number 1. It throws in Harris English into number 2. Webb Simpson number 3. Harris English number 4. And then Webb in 5 and 6. So it kind of goes in line with what I was thinking as far as Webb Simpson. It does like Harris English because of his recent form. But like I said, his course history here is a little bit suspect, and an elevated price. People may be chasing it. I hope they are. I'll try to avoid that situation. So as we go down into the 9K range, we got Kevin Kisner, who is a Seaside or Sea Island specialist. He's got a win here back in 2015, a 4th place in 2014 and 2017, and a 7th place last year in 2018. So I'm sure he'll be pretty popular, like, $200 less than Harris English. I'll probably lean Kevin Kisner, to be honest. It's not so much the savings, but I do think there's some courses that just fit Kevin Kisner. Kind of like Bubba. He's kind of like a Bubba mold, complete opposite spectrum. But there's courses that they set up for him to hit his 3-wooder driver, hits a 285, 290 in the fairway, takes his irons, and if his putter can get hot, obviously he's from Georgia, comfortable in Bermuda. So I do like Kevin Kisner quite a bit. The rest of these guys in this range, they're tough to peg. I think Scotty Scheffler I'm going to have decent exposure to. His price never seems to move. There's really nothing bad you can say about him. He's coming off, so like since the start of this season, he's gone, let's see, or his last 3 showings this season, 28th, 3rd, 18th. So like nothing like eye-opening crazy, but as far as a guy that's $9,200, and I feel like the last 3 events he might have got to 10K at the Bermuda, but most of these other ones during the fall swing, he's been around 95, 93, something like that. So I think that's fine to get to some exposure for him. Alex Noren is interesting. He's never played this event, and he's been bouncing around the European Tour and over here in the States. He played over at I think it was the Bermuda, and finished 15th, and not a bad showing. And then he went overseas to the European Tour, finished 28th, 44th. I think his form's actually pretty good. Like, I would have exposure to Alex Noren this week with how well he's been playing. He'll be, I have to imagine, he'd be the lowest owned of this bunch for sure. And then as far as Aaron Wise, I don't think this is a great golf course for him. He has a 13th place back in 2017, right when he got on tour. but really he just doesn't do it for me. So I'll probably be avoiding that. Adam Hadwin should fit the mold, but he has only played here twice and basically missed the cut in both events. He finished 70th in one, which is essentially missing the cut, DFL. So let's go down into the 8K range. Like I said, there's not a ton in the 10 and 9K that I'm really gravitating towards. It'll be a lot of GPPs trying to fill in guys around my value plays. So we'll go ahead and drop into the 8K range. We got Russell Knox at 8,900, Brian Gate 8,800, Dylan Fratelli, Henley, Poston, Bryce Garnett has been sneaky good. He was probably one of the first ones I wrote up on my list when I was running my model. It's a tough one, man. I don't know where his price has been over the last year, but I feel like it's never been this high. It can't be. But for a golf course like this, he has 5 showings since 2013. His worst finish was a 73rd, missed cut in 2015, 29th in 2017, and a 37th in 2018. Gains a lot of strokes off the tee, which is surprising. Like between him and I think it's Brian Stewart, I get those guys mixed up, but they should like blend their golf games together. Bryce Garnett's gaining 1, 2, 3 strokes off the tee and losing a stroke and a half, 2 strokes on approach. We need to find someone to meet in the middle there. But I do think he's a good fit. Like Axis pointed out, off the tee can be a benefit this week. And finishing 11th last week at the Mayakoba, we don't have any strokes gained data. But if you look back at his last 2 events, the Houston Open, he finished 42nd, gained 5.5 strokes off the tee. And the Safeway, he gained 1 stroke off the tee, finished 23rd. So coming in with pretty good form, 23rd, 42nd, 11th place finishes. Brian Gay playing extremely well, kind of a hot putter take most of the time. But if you look at his strokes gained overall to start the fall swing, it will exclude the Sanderson, which he just was knocking off rust, I guess. But the Safeway finished 23rd, gained 4.5 strokes against the field. Shriners finished 7th and gained 10 strokes against the field. Houston Open, 42nd place and gained 3 strokes against the field. Bermuda gained 12.5 strokes against the field, finished 3rd. And then last week finished 14th, gained 5.5 strokes against the field. Pretty good course history here too. He's got a 3rd place 2 years ago, a 23rd last year, and a 4th place way back in 2013. But this does kind of fit his mold. Like, if we're being honest, a guy that's not the longest on tour, but very accurate, very good driving accuracy numbers, good with his irons. His wedges are pretty stout, and he can put the lights out. Bermuda grass. Brian Gay is an interesting one for me. I didn't see where his price came out on FanDuel, but I think for me, I would probably just lean having him on DraftKings at 8,800. There's not a ton around him that really stand out. So totally fine sticking with a Brian Gay. Played him the last couple events he's been in, and he has not disappointed. So hopefully we can get him for one more week before this winter break for him. As we go down to the bottom of the list, Jim Furyk was one of Axe's first bets of the week at 55-1, I believe. Playing very well. I mean, he's played well all season, and he's got some pretty good course history. So I'm not going to use the 2012 event per se, but he did finish 3rd, just as a note. And then 2016 finished 6th, and 2018 last year missed the cut. Coming in with, let's see, I think just this year, has he missed, he may not have missed any cuts. Let's see. He missed 2 cuts this year. The PGA Championship, which is understandable. It's a long golf course. Don't expect him to play well there. And the RBC Heritage, which is kind of surprising. But those are his only 2 missed cuts all season. So, yeah, very consistent. Price, 8,100 for him is really not that bad. I can get behind that. And, I don't love anyone else around here. It'll mostly be GPP sprinkles with probably Fratelli, and then I want to have some Poston. Poston's a local guy, at least currently, and we know his off the tee numbers can be pretty good. His irons can be pretty good. So I do have interest in him, but again, it's strictly GPP. There's not a ton in here that I really want to hang my hat on. And that's probably it. Knox has been playing great. We've been playing him almost every week. His course history here is just mediocre at best. He's never finished better than 27th in 4 showings. So, he's playing well, but I don't think he's playing anything above where he has in the past. So I'll probably just avoid that. He's just too expensive. All right, as we go down into the 7K range, we get a decent couple names at the top of the list. We got Brian Harman up here, 7,900. Rory Sabatini, 7,900. Then we got Adam Long at 7,800. What a year this guy's gone, like up and down all year. I think last week he was like mid 6K range, something like that, and finished second. So now he gets a bump up to 7,800, which I think in this field is fair. I probably would have liked to see him a little bit cheaper, but if you look at the names below him and around him, like that's probably spot on for him. He's a tough one for me to get behind this week. He's only played at this event once, missed the cut last year. But if you've listened to our podcast for any length of time, if you're a member at Fantasy Golf Bag and have looked at our EAP numbers, you know Adam Long is one of the best iron players on tour. Like every single week, I think he's top 3 in our EAP stats. It's just a really tough one to peg when you got guys like a Brian Harman and a Sabatini above him that arguably, I mean, probably not even arguably, they're just more consistent. Upside, maybe not there. You know, Adam Long for showdown contest this week probably be where I peg him. But yeah, for 4-day on this course where driving can kind of bite you, his putting is not the best. That's really where he struggles with his irons being so good. So yeah, Adam Long, he's going to show up in the EAP numbers and the stat model. He'll probably show up for you, but I'll be avoiding him this week for the most part. Probably just showdown. Sabatini is totally fine. He's really never played this golf course well. He's coming in with decent form. I think he has like 330-ish place finishes the last three events he's played, but he's never really played well at this event. That's a bit concerning. I'll probably have some exposure. We'll see if I want to mix it between here and FanDuel, between DraftKings and FanDuel, but he is a class above these guys in this tier. Brian Harman is the other one, 7,900. Not playing the best, very up and down. He had a strong run there for a while. Let's see, like June, July through October, I think he gained an average of 5.4 strokes tee to green every single event. His last 2, he's missed the cut of the Houston Open and DFL last week at Mayakoba. He's got decent course history here. 4th place 2 years ago. Finished 32nd last year. A couple missed cuts in between, 15, 16. I think he's fine. Like he's for an upside play, which is kind of what you're looking for in this range for me. If there's not guys that you can gravitate to, we talked about last week with like Russell Knox in the 9K range. Like in this range, there's nobody that stands out as the solid cash type of play, like single entry play. So for me, it's just upside. I look for Brian Harman, Rory Sabatini, even like an Austin Cook who's just been playing awful, but this course apparently suits him with a win in 11th place. So that'll probably be my leans. The one that's probably most interesting to me if you go down just a bit is Joel Damon. Coming in with a 6th place last week. He's got a 37th place here last year and a 49th the year before that. So he's seen this golf course a few times. That'll probably be my lean if I spend up. The other one that I'm interested in, hopefully he goes under the radar again, kind of like he did last week, was Chris Kirk. Gets a price bump, but we've seen Chris Kirk, so I don't know if you read my article from last week. Chris Kirk played, obviously he's recovering from alcohol addiction, depression, and played last week, and I think he was like 6,200 or something like that, or 6,400 at the most. He had played in the Swing Thought Tour, which is like 3 levels below the Korn Ferry Tour. I mean, it's not a very high level golf tour. A lot of good players there, don't get me wrong, but not like You can't chalk it up to a Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour caliber field. Obviously, he finished second, shot 65 in round 2, so that kind of caught my attention coming into the Mayakoba. Of course, he's had good course history, and he started off pretty well, made the cut, finished 33rd. He has a win here in 2013, a 4th place in 2014 and 2017, a miscut back in 2016, and he's got an 18th and a 46th in that same time period. So he's got good course history. I think his form is rounding. I think he's excited to get back to it. A course that he's won is obviously good. I'll be having some exposure to Chris Kirk. It's not going to be high, but take a stab on Chris Kirk this week. All right, we got a couple more guys down at the low end of the 7K range, and then I'll touch on the values and then get you guys out of here. So this is the last podcast of the calendar year. It's not terribly long. So looking down at the low side of the 7K range, there's a couple in this mid-tier that I'll touch on in just a second. But the one that really interests me is all the way at the very bottom, and that's 7K David Hearn. If you look at David Hearn's recent form this year, it's been really pretty solid for him. He's had his up and downs. He's not like a star PGA Tour player, never will be most likely. Those are famous last words. His last 3 events here at the RSM, he's finished 9th, 17th, and 15th. So I would say a guy that's priced at 7K for upside to top 20, that's plenty of upside for me. Honestly, if he can make the cut, I'd probably be happy because he's probably my 5th or 6th guy coming into my lineup. He's probably not going to be, I can't imagine him being very popular, but with the course history and every single week, on our, on Fantasy Golf Bag, we do an expert survey. And one of the questions is talking about how do we mix recent form with course history each week, because every single event's a little bit different. Some events, the course history is a lot higher. Guys that have played a course over and over, that's a good thing. And some weeks, course history means absolutely nothing. Something like the Players' Championship, where course history really doesn't matter. Guys show up one year and they miss the cut the next year. Then they show up the next year, miss the cut again. So looking at that, David Hearn has the course history to back him up, and his recent form is relatively good for this field. It's not great. He's not going to pop off the page for you, but I have no issues with that. The other 2 that I'm looking at in this kind of same price range, I have Cameron Percy written down, Kyle Stanley. Kyle Stanley's at 7,200. There's not a ton. Cameron Percy I did mention. And then Robbie Shelton's interesting coming off of last week's showing. I can kind of understand that. He'll probably be in my GPP pool. It's hard to recommend because he has been very hit or miss. If we look at his last couple events, he's gone since the start of the season. 7th place, 28th, 52nd, 42nd, miscut, 6th. I do think he's a very good player. I think he's going to be out on tour. He played at Alabama. He had some overlap with playing with Justin Thomas. I do think there's some skill set that he has that he's going to be one of those Scotty Schefflers where he's going to be 9K every single week. He just hasn't done it yet. So I'm willing to kind of get on him early. 7,300's expensive from last week. But still, a guy like that, we just saw Brendan Todd coming in with good form, and then he wins back-to-back events. Robbie Shelton coming in with good form. I'm willing to hop on board this week. Going down below that, a name that everyone is familiar with by this point, Doc Redman at 6,900. He is, he's just consistently average, 35th at the Bermuda. Miscut last week has probably most people concerned, maybe scratching their head. But we didn't have strokes gained data for either one of those. And when you look at a golf course, he's notoriously bad around the greens. But if you look at the golf course as a whole and you look at his strengths, he's gained off the tee in every single event except for one this entire year. Again, we don't have strokes gained data last week or the Bermuda. But his iron play is okay. He pops certain weeks. His around the green game is not good. His putting is sporadic, but off the tee is pretty consistent. And again, 6,900 for a guy that is got a pretty high birdie or better rate. You're looking for upside again in this range. There's no one down here. There might be one guy down here I'll touch on in just a second, but there's really no one down here that you can, your eyes open when you see them and you're like, yeah, I'll click that button. That makes me feel pretty comfortable. But yeah, Doc Redman has the upside. He's been playing good. There's a few others in here. Like I said, I'll leave those for the article, but there's two that I do want to mention before we get you guys out of here for the show. One of them is Mr. Maverick McNeely, 6,800, playing pretty well. His last 4 events, he's gained 4 strokes against the field, 7 strokes against the field, 2.6 against the field, and 6.5 strokes against the field last week. So kind of trending in the right direction. He's got 5 straight made cuts. I do like that quite a bit. He's a great player from Stanford. His name will be up there at some point too this next season. So Maverick McNeely's on my list. He's probably one of the easier plug and plays. I'd probably bump him up above Doc Redman, to be honest. Just not even the price. I mean, $100 isn't going to do much for your lineup construction up top, but he has been playing a little bit more consistent as far as strokes gained total against the field. The other two, and let's see, you might want to sit down for this. One of them, DJ Trahan at 6,500. He's a guy that is I guess he's kind of on a comeback to the PGA Tour. He's kind of kicked around the Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour. He's played here 3 times. He's got an 11th place and a 4th place and a missed cut. His last two events, he played the Houston Open and finished 45th. Gained, 1.5 strokes ball striking, and the Bermuda Championship last week, a couple weeks ago, he finished 24th. So decent form for a guy that's 6,500, nearly minimum price. Like I said, you're looking for some upside. There's really no one down here that you can hang your hat on and feel comfortable. But I do like him there for the upside for a guy that's been playing well, making cuts. That's also a positive. The last one that I will mention, Mr. Boo Weekly. Surprisingly, I think we talked about him different times during the year. Ball striking wise is there. If you pull him up in the stat model, his approach numbers are always good. Like his irons never leave him. It's just like playing the longer golf course and then his putting. Like I think he's lost an average of 4 strokes putting every single event since May. So that's not good. But the last 2 events, 21st at the Houston Open, gained 11 strokes tee to green, and then 18th at the Bermuda Championship a few weeks ago. The RSM has been relatively kind to him. Last year, or he hasn't played here in a few years. The last year he played was 2016. He missed the cut. 15th, he finished 18th. 2014, he missed the cut. And then 13 and 12, he finished 22nd, 27th. I see a lot of the same similarities with his ball striking right now. That's mainly the reason. Honestly, he's probably expensive if you want to really be cut and dry about where he's priced. But I do think this golf course is kind of that Kisner-esque layout where you don't need to be long, be accurate off the tee, be good with your irons, and then make some putts. So I'll be fine hopping on to some Boo Weekly this week and see how that plays out. And that pretty much will do it, guys. There's a few, like I said, that I'm going to mention in my article, and also you can find a value breakdown on Roto Grinders, which goes up to around 7.8K, something like that. Guys that are just, in my opinion, underpriced and are good lineup fillers. So you can find that at rotogrinders.com, and obviously all of my work and all of our data, courtesy of Skylar of the Golf Gurus and Axis and Jacob, that is on fantasygolfbag.com. So you can check us out, join our Slack chat. We have a lot of guys in there. We have one writer for Showdown, and we have, seems like another Showdown whiz in Crack Drafter that's been in Slack chat. I think he's cashed every single slate in the last month and a half or so. Just killing it. You have to tell us his secret. He's figuring it out. So he probably uses some of our tools. We got the Showdown model, the live strokes gain tool. So a lot of good stuff that you can find. Those are both free resources. So check us out, fantasygolfbag.com. You can find me on Twitter at RedKachik. And like I said, this is the last event of the calendar year, but stay tuned for some other podcasts during this short break. And we'll be back for the Tournament of Champions the first week of January. Appreciate you guys all year supporting us. If you guys are members, we really, really appreciate that. That always helps us kind of keep creating these new tools that you see rolling out every other month or so. We appreciate it. So we will see you in a couple weeks for the next Up and Down series. Otherwise, we'll see you for the Tournament Champions out there in Hawaii. Have a good week, guys. Good luck. See ya.